Vishamahaihi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we were discussing the number 5, which is Upadhi. So what Upadhi does is to make the Upahita appear differently. Upahita is a vastu which is the one that appears to change because of Upadhi. So in the example of the crystal and a yellow flower, let's say, the crystal is the Upahita and the flower is the Upadhi. And the status of the crystal as Upahita is only in relative terms to the Upadhi. You see? In other words, a crystal is a crystal. The reality of the crystal is that it's a non-changeable entity which is peculiar because it has a structure that can reflect things that are close to it. That is the nature of the crystal. But in the situation where it appears to be yellow because of the proximity of the flower next to it, in that status, there are two names. One is Upadhi, and then the yellow crystal is called Upahita. So now we are clear about the definitions of what is Upadhi, what is Upahita. Okay. So now, you remember we talked about the Paramarthika Sat and the Vyavaharika Sat. So the Paramarthika Sat has the nature of not changing at all, right? Whereas the Vyavaharika Sat and also the overlay of the Pratibhasika Sat, both the objective reality and the subjective reality, is the transformation, apparent transformation of the Paramarthika Sat. And this happens through Upadhi. So what happens is that the Paramarthika Sat does not really change, but because of the proximity of something which is very close to it, it appears to change. And I think a great example of that in the modern times is an electricity and its usage. So if you look at that, the electricity cannot light up this room. Cannot light up the room. But what it can do is to use an Upadhi, which is an electric bulb, to transform itself to light up the darkness of this room, andhakara of this room. And here we will see in the case of the crystal and the yellow flower, there are two entities. Okay? And even in the case of the electricity and the electric bulb, there are two entities. So later on, I don't know if I have, I think I have a section on, I think I have a section on Chaitanya and Jada. Chaitanya and Jada, number 12. So I'll borrow some things from there, but let's see if I can. No, there's some more things to talk about, so I won't really go into that. But also, one other thing, I'll borrow one thing from the Chaitanya and Jada, sentience and insentience, into this discussion. How? Because the electricity in that example is sentient and the bulb is insentient. Okay? So the bulb acts as an upadhi and transforms the inherent power of the electricity into usability. And the usability is at the vyavaharika level. Right? So the paramarthika level is the electricity in that example. It's not the final paramarthika sat. But in that relative example, the electricity is the paramarthika sat, which looks like a light by the transformation of the upadhi of the bulb. And the upadhi of the bulb does not change the electricity. In fact, the same electricity can be used as a heater, which is a heater upadhi. The same electricity can be used as an air conditioner. It's an air conditioning upadhi. The electricity does not really change at all. This is a very interesting thing. I remember being confused about. In fact, there was a question from one of the ladies that had contacted me, and she was saying, I don't understand how you can say that the Atma is nirguna. Well, how can you say that? And this also took me a while to understand how Atma, the Sakshi, is nirguna. So then one can understand by these examples that the electricity, because somebody can ask, does the electricity have the guna of heating? Does the electricity have the guna of cooling? Can it light up things? No, it can't, but it can. You cannot have the guna of heating and air conditioning and lighting without electricity. So the upadhi is a very beautiful thing that explains a lot of things. The apparent transformation of electricity into vyavaharika sat is explained by the upadhi. So this is what happens. This is so interesting. Now you become a seer by the power of seeing. You become a holder of the cup by the power of holding. upadhi of holding hands, legs. It's a very complex set of upadhis that is the result of your basic. So the question is, how does the upadhi occur? So we will see later on that unlike the case of the crystal and the yellow flower, and unlike the case of the electric bulb, because the electric bulb is a very interesting thing. It's got a filament and some things in there, an enclosure and so on and so forth. It has nothing to do with electricity, but it has everything to do with the electricity because it alone can transform the darkness of the room into, as soon as electricity touches it, it transforms it. It's exactly the same thing with us. My Atma is like the ultimate electricity. And you can really let your mind think about all the things. The dream is a upadhi. Though much happens in the dream, but it doesn't change you. You do not, once you wake up from a bad dream, you do not retain any badness. In fact, you struggle. It's so interesting. You struggle to remember, what was that? Why was it such a bad thing? What happened? Gone, you can't do it. And if I can pause and then extend that point just a little bit, one can argue that the dream and the waking are fundamentally different. Why? Because the dream appears to follow your example that it is a upadhi and it does not affect the paramarthika sat, right? So the dream fits the example of the upadhi not affecting the upahita at all. That one fits. Because why? Because you can't even, it's gone and leaves no traces whatsoever. However, in the case of Jagrata Avastha, not only do you have the hardware of the upadhi remaining the same, but the software of the upadhi also remains the same. How? Because you wake up and you have your spouse next to you. It is the same spouse next to you that was last night. Hardware remains the same. Not only that, if there was no software, you would say, who is this person? Who is this person? And actually this is what happens in Alzheimer's. But the whole creation has provided a very interesting thing. You have a memory of the person, of exactly, that is all stored in your mind, in your storage. So anyway, so that happens. So now you can argue that the Jagrata Avastha, the waking state, does not seem to follow this example of upadhi and upahita. Why doesn't it follow? Because in upadhi, I should be able to remove the upadhi, and then I am becoming free of it. But that doesn't seem to happen, because I am the same person. There are changes during the year, during the lifetime when you become older and all of that. But basically it's the same body, software remains the same, and so on and so forth. That's not true. So in fact, if I can amplify that point. So here, the wisdom of the Shastra, when it says something, it is neither doubtful, nor unsure, nor is it false. This is not human-made. This is the very nature of, this is Vedanta, this is Vedas. So that when the Vedas say something, yes, absolutely true. It is knowledge, it is not philosophy. This is why I think I've mentioned this so many times to my students. I learned this so well from Swami Dayanand Ji. You will see him never saying the word philosophy or Vedanta. Never. So for example, if you are a woman, is that a philosophy? Not a philosophy, it's knowledge. So similarly, when the Vedas say something, it is not philosophy, it is knowledge. What can happen is that you don't understand it. That's okay. There's no problem with that. You understand it. This is Vastu Tantra. It is not Purusha Tantra. So the reason I went on this tangent for a while was because Shastra says there is no difference between Jagrat Avastha and Swapna Avastha, between dream and waking. There are minor differences. But then how come there appears to be such a big difference? That the dream just disappears without any residue, whereas the waking state happens to reinforce my hardware and software, and all my life I remain this more or less the same thing. How? So the Shastra says that basically you have repeated, this is the waking state, is a repeated dream for a long time. That's it. It is just the length of your memory. Because suppose, for the sake of argument, suppose you have the same dream night after night after night after night after night. It will be exactly like the waking state. There will be no difference. But Ishvara, His wisdom, the dream is a very beautiful example. We can talk so much about that, and we'll go more into it. Hopefully time permits. If not, then there are separate, the whole Mandukya is on the understanding of the dream and so on. But the fact remains that both of them are upadhis. And remember I told you about Adi Shankara talking to his mother. That, Mom, you don't understand. This is like a dream, because it's just that you've had the same dream every day, so you are attached to me. But the fact of the matter is, basically, you are not attached to anybody. You are like electricity. So the upadhi of the electricity have two different ways of expressing itself. One is this short-term dream, the other one is a long-term Jagrat Avastha. But they are both upadhis. They are both upadhis, they are both only affect the upahita. So this is exactly what happens. During our Jagrat Avastha, I become an upahita. So my crystal becomes yellow. Appears to become yellow. It doesn't become yellow. It appears to become yellow. But the quality of a crystal is you cannot change its structure. You cannot just change the color of the vastu. It remains the same. Same thing with the electricity. It's a very beautiful thing, electricity. Because there's no change to it, and yet it can do just amazing things. Same thing in the, just think about it. With all these things require a lot of vichara. Who creates a table in the dream? Who creates the sun and the water? They were all there. They're all there. You created it just from your own thoughts. This is just amazing. In the same way as we will see and we should see under the wisdom of Shastra, which doesn't lie, doesn't have any doubts, we should see I appear to change in my awakening state, but I don't. And the only reason that I have difficulty in visualizing this is because I haven't thought through this enough. This is just my own ignorance and so on for the time being. No questions, please. Let's just continue on with it. Towards the end, please write them down. Don't forget about it. Everybody continue with the vision that I'm trying to make. So this is the situation. It all hangs together. But we have to understand what the process is. This is the upadhi and the upahita. This is the process. This is the phenomena. This is a phenomena. How it phenomena works is what I need to understand. Once I understand it, I'm happy. But until then, I have doubts and I've got problems and I've got this, that, the other. So I'm going to just leave upadhi at this point. Okay, let's go on to the next point, number 6, which is identification, abhimana. This is a name of another phenomenon. They're all interrelated, but we can segment it into a name of a phenomenon, which is abhimana. And in this process, in this phenomena, I take on an identification. I take on an identification with something which is not me. It's called tadatmya. Tasya bhavam iti tadatmya. Tadatmya means becoming something else, apparently becoming something else, is called tadatmya. And this happens with my acceptance, with my agreement. I voluntarily, let's see how that happens. So the tadatmya or I become an abhimana, both are interchangeable words. But abhimana is better because there also is an abhimani. Abhimani is the person that has the abhimana. So that in tadatmya you don't have a verb like that, a noun like that. So abhimana is better. Abhimani and abhimana. So a good, interesting example of that is adopting either a political, religious or ideological identity. So when you say, I'm a Democrat, this is abhiman. I'm a Republican. Okay? So, and it's very interesting, it's the thing is that what do you mean by you're a Republican? Well, I vote as a Republican. Are you registered? Yes, I'm registered. But does that change you in any some way? No, but my behavior is like that even though I shouldn't be a Republican at this time. It's not a good time to be a Republican. And everybody is, this is interesting. Swami, I forget sometimes, Swami Mahishananda ji did that, or Swami Vakhandananda. He says, this is a very interesting thing. Sometimes you have what is called an asakti. So asakti is a word where you are obstinate. You're obstinate because of abhimana. So this is what is happening. People are saying, should we, in these circumstances, should I remain as a Republican? Yeah, but don't you know all this stuff is going on and so on and so forth? I know, but you know what? You know what? Nobody can explain it. I stay as a Republican. So this is kind of an interesting example. And Swami Mahishananji, I think, gave that example. He says this is very common. You have a certain identity. I'm a congressman. That used to happen in our family also. It happens every day in these families. If somebody is a Congress person, somebody is a BJP person. And the older people used to be Congress and the younger people used to be BJP. So it's an identification. You behave like that. You vote like that. No, there's no basic change in you, but the way you behave is by identifying with something. Now, we can even take a more interesting example in the modern terms. And we've discussed that so it'll be a repetition for you. Suppose you go to a movie and this example is more explicit if you don't have your Netflix on your own TV, but you actually go to a real movie and eat popcorn and there's this ads are going on and huge sound, so loud, the louder the better, and there's surround sound and the whole screen takes the whole wall. In other words, you are engulfed in it. And what happens is, for a while, you have your own identity. You take your cell phone out. This is why, so you're saying, I'm not watch the ads. While the ads are going on, then you take it out and saying, let's see, did somebody send me a WhatsApp message? So this is all your own identity. Oh, good. That's good news. I'm happy that they are okay. Okay, good, excellent. Oh, wonderful, all this. You're sitting under the same kind of things, but you're just watching. I remember early on, I don't know why I shouldn't be telling you about all this. So very early on, when we got the cell phones and so on, and we were excited, oh, this is so wonderful, now you can get these messages and so on. So I think we went to a movie, and my wife was sitting next to me, and she continued doing this. She was so absorbed in doing this, and I think the movie was starting. Then the people sitting next to us turned back. And because I think there was some light flashing and so on. So I begged her, I said, stop it. And so this is what happens. So you have your own identity. At that time, she was who she is. Then the movie starts. And you are now absorbed. And if it is a good movie, like for example, I went to see Oppenheimer. I don't see movies at all, even at home, or it just don't interest me anymore. But once in a while, I see a movie. And when Oppenheimer came, I wanted to see that, okay? Because I was in Berkeley at that time, and I had seen some of the characters, so I was very curious to see that. You will not believe, it was one of the worst movies I ever saw. I could have walked out any minute. I really wanted to take my cell phone out. I couldn't understand the dialogue. And the whole thing didn't make any sense and so on. So that's not identification. I could not identify. But there could be movies, and I probably have in the past, where you are so taken in. I'm trying to remember which movie I could have gone to it where I guess I should say one. A couple of our friends, they came up with this huge media room, and they invited us for dinner, and specifically I'd asked them, can we see Article 370? Because I was very aware of Amit Shah and what happened and so on. So when that came, I actually also wanted to see the Kashmir story, but I never did it. Kashmir Files. I should have gone that. But anyway, this couple can have Netflix and they can show this. So I told them, I said, I'd love to see that. So there, I did identify what happened and so on and so forth, because I was so involved with what it was. But anyway, when you go to a movie that you are very impressed, what happens? Your identification is in such a manner, such a depth, that whatever happens to the characters that you identify with happens to you. You start crying. You're sitting next to somebody, you'll say, stop it. Don't cry. You can say that. You really cry and you laugh. This is identification. This is identification. See what I have. In in life, this is what happens when this is an identification. So now it's a very interesting thing. In a movie, sure, I understand the identification you talked about, crying there and so on. But then the movie is over. And it's very possible that you are still wiping your tears for a while you're going down the stairs. So you have to be very careful that you don't take your handkerchief out and so on and so forth. And everybody's saying, hey, come on, move. So while they're still thinking about that, but it goes. By the time you reach your car, it's gone. Okay? In life, how can you say this is an identification? Because it never goes. It will go. You do have a status. So in the case of going to a movie or becoming a Democrat or a Republican, there is a start and finish. You go back to your own status. What is that status? Who are you? Going to a movie, you are somebody with a family and life and so on and so forth. And for a while you got identified, but then you lost it and you go back to the original one. What is that case in the case of our waking state? Because what do you go back to? I'm glad you asked. I thought you never will. You have to listen and understand. There is a vastu, there is a person who takes on this identification but really doesn't. And we just, because of the ignorance, so then some more factors come into it. The ignorance, the self-ignorance comes in, and we just identify with things for a while, but eventually we realize this is just an identification. And I think we can mention that at this point, which again, many of you already know. There is hardly any difference between sleep and death. Very little difference. They are identical. When you sleep, you lose your identity with what is called Vishwa. Vishwa is the status of being a waking person. Whatever, Vishwa is a common name, it can apply to all of us. You lose that identification when you go to sleep. But that's just an identification. You regain it when you wake up. In the case of the dream, you acquire that identification and it loses that identification when you become awake. But in the other case, you regain the identification of a waker. When you die, same thing happens. You don't have the identification of this Vishwa. Why? Because it cannot sustain you. It cannot. The body and the software remains the same, but the hardware needs to change. That has happened to all of us. You go into Microsoft Office and you have a heart failure, and so hopefully you saved everything. In our case, Ishvara makes sure that you save everything. you have a cloud memory which is just amazing. The cloud memory that we have is so vast. You cannot have enough servers to take care of, even if it is AI or nothing. It is an infinite server, and it's all maintained. In all from your previous life, it is maintained. That software is maintained. When you pick up a new hardware, you pick up pieces of the old software. Pieces meaning it is the ones that are most recent or most influential, but the other ones are not forgotten. They are also kept. So you just adopt a new hardware, a new identification. But at the same time, you are still like Upahita. Same, these are new bodies, but you all remain exactly the same way. So this is the phenomena of Abhimana, Abhimani and Abhimana. So more to be said, but I think I need to go on to the next topic. Okay, now we go to the next topic, which is types of change. Types of change. There are three types of changes that we can visualize in the context of what we are understanding. One is what is called Arambha. Arambha. Arambha means a new beginning. It's called Arambha. So there, for example, making something absolutely fresh, like some vegetables, some dal or something like this. There, that also is not a complete arambha because it was already there. So it's not complete arambha, but relatively yes. And certainly for manufacturing a cell phone, you can say it's an arambha. The second type of change is what is called parinama. Parinama. Parinama is a transformation from one form into another form. And this change is where you cannot go back to the old form. So if I can boast a little bit of I don't have much memory left, but I do have some shlokas that so Jayanand used to explain this. There is a Sanskrit way of explaining parinama. Swaswarupa parityagena rupantara apattiti parinama. Swaswarupa parityagena. You give up the original form, rupantara apatti. You have a brand new form. This is called parinama. And the typical example given is milk becoming yogurt. It's a one-way transformation. You cannot, once you become yogurt, you can't become milk again. That's it. So this is a parinama. Okay? And so, in parinama is very possible in Vyavaharika Sat. In Vyavaharika Sat, it is very possible. But it appears to happen even in Paramarthika Sat. And this is the problem. It appears and fools us. So now let's talk about the third type of change, which is Vivarta. There is a long definition of Vivarta. I won't get into that. You need to get some into Sanskrit and so on. And I didn't make my notes on that. But the definition of Vivarta, in terms of the shloka that I gave out earlier, is Swaswarupa aparityagena rupantarapatti. It is vivarta. Without giving up its original form, you take on a new form. It is called vivarta. And the example of that is gold becoming an ornament. So apparently you have changed the very form of the gold, sort of. And the ornament, being mithya, has that ability to make the gold look different. But it's only appear to make different, you cannot change it. It's not like milk becoming yogurt. It just remains the same. But the change is apparent, no doubt about it. And this is possible in Paramarthika Sat. This is possible, vivarta, and this is exactly what happens. Okay? Now, one can ask, because a gold becoming, a piece of gold becoming a ring, even though it satisfies your definition of vivarta, but it does have some change. It does have a change. So you can say that a blob of gold is not the same as a ring, even though they are both gold. So there is a better example of vivarta in a rope being misunderstood as a snake. And you know all that example very well. I won't really go into that. Very briefly, what it is that it is possible under circumstances. This is a very important example in Vedanta. There's several very important examples. This is one of them. Rope snake example is a very important example. And the phenomena there is that you can misunderstand something if there is some light but not enough light. If there is no light, ignorance is bliss. So supposing there is a real snake underneath your bed and it's all dark, you're not worried. But if you turn the light on and you see thinking slithering, oh my God. You mean I slept the whole night with this guy sitting there? The very thought you just makes you shiver. Anyway, so in the case of so now what happens is you can see something. This is a good example because this rope is harmless. But because of the misunderstanding, it becomes potentially harmful. That's why the example is given. Otherwise, you have a lot of, so this is the example of fear. You also have the example of Shuktika and Rajat. Shuktika means the mother of pearl, which we don't usually see, so it's very hard to relate. What normally, I think the Swami says that if you walk on Juhu Beach and you see a cigarette, what is it called? A cigarette wrapper. Cigarette wrapper, which looks like it is shiny and silvery. You are tempted to pick it up and say, wow, somebody dropped some coin there. Now you pick it up and it's got nothing. So there it is the opposite of the snake and rope example, because that was indicative of fear. This was indicative of desire. You are really looking for something valuable, and you find value in something which is valueless. Either case, the idea is that there is in fact a an apparent change. Well, let's go back to the rope and snake example. In that example, when you see a snake instead of a rope, this is a more advanced example of vivarta. Vivarta, as opposed to the, see what I'm saying? It is a more advanced example of vivarta than gold and ornamentation. Because you can argue, one can argue, and people do, these are all thinkers and so on, that in the case of the gold and ornamentation, there really is some change. You cannot say, even though it is reversible change, but there is some change. In the case of a rope becoming a snake, there is no change. There's no change. There is an apparent change. What time is it? I'm going to now, I decided I was going to tell you this somewhere or the other, but I might as well tell you that now. This is an amazing example that I read from Swami Akhandananda that really made things a lot clearer to me. Amazingly clear for me. Let me share that with you. Okay? All right. Hope you're ready for this one. So here's what happens. If you don't know the reality of the rope, there was not enough light on it. There was only partial light, not full light. And you mistake the rope to be a snake. What is your conclusion? There is a snake out there. Isn't it? Your conclusion is there is a snake there. Somebody will, you can just immediately walk out of the room and say, I think I see a snake. So you say, where? There. You can even point out, there. Means that it is not here, it is there. Understand this. When you find out that it is a rope by somebody switching on the light and said, is this what you thought to be snake? He says, yes. No, this is just a rope. Do you know what happens? The place of the snake as being there is recognized to be here. Before the recognition of the rope, it was there. After the recognition of the rope, you realize it was in my mind. In the same way, the world appears outside of me. You see a snake there. Where? There. Once the teaching becomes clear in you, you realize, my God, all along it was In fact, it is all here. The dream also occurs in your own mind. The projection is also in your own mind. There is no reality outside of that. This is how important this example is. And this transformation of from there to here was very revealing to me. And Swami Khandananda is the one that made it clear to me. They have really made such a big difference in my own thinking. And keep that in your mind. The only antidote to all this is our own stubbornness. No, no, no. How can you say that? No, no, no. This is like your identification of staying as a Republican. I know it, these Mahatmas, they give you all these examples and so on, but this is not what it is. This is exactly the problem. But one day we'll convince you to change from a Republican to a Democrat. If you keep thinking and saying, no, no, you got these guys are, I remember this talking of these two parties. This must have been like 30, 40 years ago. I mean, I'm amazing. I'm in my 80s. I won't tell you my exact age, but just I'm over 80. And I came here when I was 23. And so you can imagine I've been an American for that long. So I remember about 30, 40 years ago, I was flying in a plane. Excuse me. And I can't remember who was the president, maybe Nixon or a long time ago. And I was a young man and I was trying to sort of figure out the structure of these two parties. At that time I really didn't have much identification with India. And now it's gone back to India. I don't worry about the Americans at all. I'm much more interested in BJP and Congress and Rahul Gandhi and India and Pakistan. All those things are really, that's what I really listen to. My spare time, that's what I do. But at that time, I was very involved with American. So I used to really think about which of the parties, why they are and what they are. There was a very long article in the Wall Street Journal. I still remember that so well. And so I was reading it. What it said was, basically, if you were to put down in few words what characterizes Democrats versus Republicans, it is this. The Democrats are incompetent and the Republicans are criminals. And you know, this is still true today. Honestly. And I remember this is like 40 years ago. This was the characterization. So the parties remained the same, basically. The one was incompetent, and I think they said unethical. Somebody said criminal, so I just adopted it. No, it wasn't criminal. They are potentially criminal, but not really criminal.
Worse than criminal.
Worse than criminal. So this is a very good example of vivarta. Please make a note of that. What is a good example of vivarta? It is the rope snake example. Something appears to change. At least in the case of gold and ornaments, there is some change. So now I can summarize this. It's good that all pieces are coming together. In the Vyavaharika Sat, you can have parinama. No, this is, so the milk and yogurt are in Vyavaharika Sat. So their parinama is okay. But in Paramarthika Sat, you cannot have parinama. Yeah, I have parinama. But you can have vivarta. And the best vivarta is that of the lopin snake. And there, the explanation of Swami Khandananda was just amazing. That in one case it appears away from you, in one state. Another state, you realize, oh my God. And then you can see the similarity of the dream and the Ujagra. So that is the types of change, number 7. So we will stop at that and go to the next one after we meet tomorrow morning. And I think we need to speed it up a little bit more. So we'll see how to do that, because there's so much to do after this. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyote Gamaya Vidya Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Namaha Hari Om. So, Raju and